Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Miller, the Chief of Human Capital with the Rochester City School District, and today we are continuing our Office of Human Capital Learn at Lunch series with a focus on board policies today. Again, we are the Office of Human Capital, and we work to recruit, develop, support, and retain the most effective, diverse staff. For our session today, just want to remind everyone to mute. You can certainly put something in the chat. And our other expectations relative for use of Teams. For today, our learning goals include two things. One, to understand our policy framework in the Rochester City School District. You should be able to articulate some of the key components of human capital related policies that affect our work. You should have a comprehensive understanding of our policy framework in terms of purpose, scope, and impact on what we do out of human capital. And then secondly, should have the ability to navigate our policy documents, understand where they are, how to access them, and where to help employees access them. Should also understand the structure and the key sections of how our policies are organized. And so we're going to be reviewing that today. Again, this is just a continuation of our Office of Human Capital OHC Learn at Lunch series, where we can connect and collaborate, increase our communication, and support each other in the work that we're doing. All of these sessions that we have over the next year are defined. The recordings and presentations from the sessions are saved on our Office of Human Capital website under the Learn at Lunch section. And you can see we have an ambitious schedule to continue to learn and grow and involve different members of our team in presenting and sharing their work. The other thing that is starting to happen is that people outside of the Office of Human Capital are starting to look at these materials and resources and learn and grow. So today, as I mentioned, we are focused on board policy, and policy is simply the broad written guidelines that are set by the Board of Education that are intended to chart our district's course of action. Sometimes people talk about policy in a very generic way. The true policies that exist in the Rochester City School District are the policies that are set by the Board of Education, and policies help us through the Board of Education to determine our priorities, right? Elected officials are elected to help chart that course and to work directly with our superintendent to ensure that our priorities are set, that direction is provided. It also helps us through policy to understand our responsibilities as an organization, helps us to ensure that we're committed to what the expectations are, and it offers the public information about what we're trying to do, which in turn ensures greater accountability. Policy can also help us to provide notice of legal responsibilities, such as those that might pertain to sexual harassment. They also help us to ensure legal compliance and provide stability and continuity for our organization. The board's role specifically within human capital, they help us to set the tone and expectations for what they expect in terms of the work that we do, whether it's falling in recruitment and selection or employee benefits, staff relations, or staff and educator effectiveness. They also take some specific actions relative to the work that we do that folks in human capital, I think, are very well aware of, because we work to twice a month prepare board resolutions that they will consider and vote on. And those would include the hiring of staff, the conferral or the denial of tenure, perhaps discipline or discipline charges, or dismissal of employees. There are also times, perhaps relative to employees, that they'll hear and decide appeals, but overall ensure that the district is run well. And I think there's an important piece of information relative to understanding the role of the board relative to governing the school district versus managing the school district. The Board of Education sets those priorities and goals, and they hire the superintendent. Superintendent then is set to manage and lead the district. And so understanding that difference between governance and management is important. And what we oftentimes see in many school districts, particularly when new board members come onto boards of education, that there's a learning curve around understanding differences between governance and management and how that works and plays. And so sometimes when you see conflict with school boards and school districts. It can be, one area of conflict can be between those differences of governance and management. So, Board of Education policy versus administrative regulation. You probably are aware, and I'll show you in a moment, that there are board policies that the board set, and then there are also regulations that specify in greater detail how we will implement the policy that the board set. So those regulations or procedures are set by the administration. So policy is going to be set by the board, and it's going to state their philosophy and their goals, and it's going to be the what and why of what they're focused on. The policy should be general, and it should provide guidance for the district or for the superintendent to then set regulation and procedure. And then as an administration, we carry out those philosophies and goals. It's essentially the how and the when, and setting specific procedural steps and details about how those goals can be achieved. So here's an example, and I'd ask each of you in the moment here on your own to consider as you read this, is this a policy or is this a regulation? Take a moment to read that. And if you said that this appears to be a policy, you'd be right. This appears to be a policy rather than a regulation. Policies are generally outlined in broad principles or guidelines or expectations, while regulations tend to be more specific and detailed. So as we look at this next slide, take a moment to read this one. Is it policy or regulation? So as you look at this, you see, greater specific expectations for the operations and how the goals of the board might be achieved. And so this is how we do the work, or how we ensure the specificity of the work. And so that greater detail and specificity is something that the administration would set forth to achieve the goals that the board might have. So as we look at creation of policy, or we look at policy, understanding those differences is important. And policy goes through a life cycle of development. And you'll notice, if you pay attention to school board and school board meetings, that we're regularly talking about policies, and we're having conversations about policy, and we're working to improve policies, or at times even create new policies. And other times we've had opportunities where we've eliminated policy or combined two policies into one policy. We get a lot of support and guidance around policy development, because sometimes we need to put things in place because of changes in laws or regulation. And so the board's legal counsel, our district's general counsel, works very closely with the board to provide guidance and support. And in turn, we get good information from organizations like the New York State School Boards Association that works to provide support and guidance to all school boards in New York State. And so they regularly provide information as well to help us do this work and to do it well. As I mentioned, there are different ways or influences or factors that can cause us to want to update our policies, change our policies, combine, eliminate, or edit them. And you can see here, there are external factors that sometimes will compel us to do those things. And then there are also internal actions that can do that. You think about, again, changes in laws or regulations, or changes that have been impacted because of court decisions, but also the economics and current events that might be going on. Certainly, the staff shortages that we're experiencing nationally can cause us to think differently about some of our expectations from the board level, in terms of not only policy, but also the goals that they set. There can also be a series of internal factors that come into play. Student suspensions, right? All of those things can help to influence us. And in our district and in our community, we had a significant shift and change as we looked at suspension data and student suspension data, and that influenced us at the board level to call for change that we then had to implement. Uh, So where are our board policies? All of our board policies are provided to our employees at the time of hire, and they attest to receipt of those district policies. The full district policy manual is publicly available by visiting our website, and importantly, it has also been translated into multiple languages so that it's accessible not only to our staff but to our community. We further highlight key policies that are really important for our staff to know at the time of hire through providing them to them and having their attestation, but we also explain them in greater detail in our all staff handbook. So while there may be a policy, we want to ensure that our staff understand that policy, but they also understand the additional expectations around professionalism that we may have set as an administration to ensure that they then follow. So policy and regulation can combine to ensure that we can provide our employees with good understanding of what our expectations are and what the vision of the board is. They are organized by series, and as you see on this slide, you can see how they're broken out by a series of numbers and then by essentially a topic. You'll notice that the 9,000 series is specific to employees, but I would share that there are policies that are applicable to all of our staff across all of the different series that you see listed here. You can see the numbers of policy documents that are in each of those sections, and all can be accessed and printed by any employee or member of the public. Just to provide an example, here's a screenshot of the 9,000 series, and you can see that there's a series of policies listed and identified there. And in the third column, you on the right, you also see that corresponding relevant policies that kind of fit with that policy are identified, and then also the regulation, so that if there is a regulation that goes into greater detail around the expectations of the administration, that will also be listed there, and it will be followed up with the letter R. So if you look at policy 9240, that's our recruitment, hiring, and residence initiative policy. And then the regulation goes into greater detail about how we administer and ensure that that policy is met. I mentioned our staff handbook. Our staff handbook goes into some greater detail and expands on expectations, not only in policy, but in terms of the workplace. And our staff handbook is provided to all staff at the point of hire. It is reviewed. They attest that they've received it. And it is searchable and usable and accessible to them. We provide it and mention it and connect on it in staff training and in onboarding and orientation. If you look at the staff handbook, you see how it goes into greater detail and is much more expansive relative to comparison of the policies to really help guide and inform staff around what our expectations are. As I mentioned, we do provide staff at the point of hire some key policies that they should understand and be aware of and review, and they attest to receiving this. The other thing that's important, and that this document states, all staff are responsible for knowing the information contained in all policies and regulations. Please note that these policies and regulations are revised periodically. So we all have an expectation to be aware and to meet the aims and goals of the policies that are set for us. And these things are important, right? Why are they important? Well, here are the reasons why. Board policies reflect the legal requirements of the district of our society that are set and which govern education. And knowledge of these policies help to ensure that our staff members can comply not only with law, but that they can reduce the risk of legal issues. Policy also ensures that we have consistent practices. If we are clear about what our actions and our expectations are, and we provide them to staff in writing, they're going to have better success in meeting those. But it's also going to help promote fairness and equity across the entire school district and for all of our employees. The other thing that's important about this is that it provides for accountability and professionalism. Again, board policy defines our expectations for staff and their performance. And so knowing and adhering to these policies ensures that staff members can be accountable and that we can promote a culture of responsibility and professionalism. It also ensures that our staff understand their role in making ethical decisions and their role in contributing to an overall um, ethical workplace. And then lastly, policies serve as a communication tool to convey our values and our goals and our priorities. And when staff members are familiar with those things, it helps to ensure improved communication and alignment. More than that, it allows for informed contributions, collaboration, and it fosters a cohesive, supportive work environment. In summary, staff awareness of our policies is essential for legal compliance, for maintaining professionalism, for fostering effective communication, and for ensuring collaboration across the school district. Relative to us specifically within the Office of Human Capital, our work is pivotal in terms of aligning to the expectations that the organization has. By ensuring compliance, again, we too also foster a positive workplace culture. It's our role to ensure compliance, and it's the role of leaders in our schools to ensure compliance. When we do that, we help to foster a better workplace where we're supporting our staff, where we're supporting our students, and we're directly contributing to the long-term success of the district and the organization. When we ensure a positive, productive workforce, we're in turn ensuring the success of our students and our city. Everything we matters, and so we all must align ourselves behind the expectations and the goals and priorities of our Board of Education and our superintendent. So our work in the Office of Human Capital is critically important to guide and support staff, to guide and support leaders in this work, and to ensure that those things are in place and that our staff are meeting the aims and expectations and that we can have a positive and productive workplace. So that was intended to be a brief, high-level overview of board policies and the importance of board policies, not only for our school district and for our students and community, but for the work that we do out of the Office of Human Capital. So at this time, I'd like to thank you and welcome you to use this exit ticket survey that is in the meeting invitation from today to provide us some feedback. Thank you for joining our Office of Human Capital Learn at Lunch series, and we'll see you soon. Have a great day.